Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally. And you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Finally Clicked. An anniversary episode, a celebration, a time of reflection.
Yes.
And
who are you?
Oh, and I'm Jesse Moore.
You're Jesse Dylan Moore.
Jesse Dylan Moore. I'm sitting here with Margaret Smith, who is dressed like Olivia Newton-John from Grease, specifically at the very end when she's wearing the leather jacket and she's come around, she's come full circle, and now she's accepting of this new rock and roll lifestyle. You are fully adorned today with a gray hoodie, a black leather jacket, an ASMR and whiskey t-shirt, and black leggings. I am dressed in a black polo shirt.
It's a nice shirt.
Jeans, and my retro Air Jordans.
Oh, I got my Converse, my Chucks on today.
See these things?
Oh, hey, nice.
Oh, man.
That's a tall table. That's a tall table to put your leg up on.
I pulled a muscle trying to show Margaret my shoes. We have a special episode today. Today is, it's going to be everything that you love about Finally Clicked. It's going to be random, insightful, confusing.
Delightful.
I mean, we've had, 365 days to practice this, so now we're very good at all of those things.
We're well-versed.
Yeah, almost professional. In fact, in preparation for this episode, I realized I have to, have a second career as an audio engineer because I don't know how to do the things we want to do.
I know. That's going to be, 2020 is going to be the year of upping our game in terms of audio drops and truly mastering.
What's
the
that?
audio.
Do you know, shoot. Why do I always think of stuff that's really obscure that I can't, then I have to Google it?
That's your specialty.
Do you know the name for, how you can have something like you tip over a domino?
Yeah.
And that pushes a ball, which then rolls down a ruler?
Yes.
It's called the robe.
Oh.
Something.
Oh, gosh.
I can't remember what that's called
I don't
now.
know what that's called technically.
Well, geez. These analogies don't work the same when you don't
When you don't have the words.
When you don't know what things are called.
I know.
Which is kind of the basis for this whole episode. This whole episode is supposed to be an awkward analogy.
Absolutely.
We asked you guys to contribute to our episode by talking about us. Talking about Finally Clicked, the podcast, in a weird Jesse analogy. And so we're excited to share those with you today.
We are.
They're delightful. We've laughed
so much.
so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Hey, but I'm not going to be shy as a words of affirmation guy. I might just put this on a loop and fall asleep to it every night.
Oh my God.
Jill will be so relieved she won't have to try to remember to say something affirming.
That's hilarious. Do you have any reflections that you want to have, or should we go? Should we listen to our listeners first?
I have so many reflections.
I know. Let's listen to our listeners maybe, and then we can just drop stuff in. Unless you have something that you want to say right now.
I mean, right now. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I think this means more. This means a lot to you. This 1 year anniversary.
It does. Yes.
I'm a little surprised by its impact on you.
Oh well, I'm a big believer in celebrating. And the podcast, you and I think we've talked about it for so long, and you particularly have really pushed the idea along and made it happen. And it's made more of an impact on me than I thought it was going to, because I realized I mentioned this the other night. I went live on the Finally Clicked Instagram, and we only have 130 followers to start with. But Kevin Kaufman happened to be on there. Kevin Kaufman out of Arizona with Group 4610. And I just was telling whoever was on essentially that it takes so much less energy for me to do this than it does to teach. And I believe in connecting with people. And so I know that teaching and being face-to-face with people is the best way, first and foremost. However, this has been a great addition to be able to send people episodes with things that you and I talk about so often, but we can't just stand here and repeat and go around the country and just constantly be teaching 100% of the time. So it's really been a huge learning piece for me, and it's taught me a lot about audio, and the guests that we've had have been incredible. I have to say, I mean, I know I'm biased. However, I've listened to enough podcasts now to understand the importance of having good content, and we legit have solid content. Legit. So yeah, it's a big deal to me, and I want to celebrate it. And also I believe in trying to help you celebrate, because I know that's not something you've always done, and I want to make sure that we celebrate it. It's a big deal.
I don't know. I've always been a good celebrator.
Yeah, but you tend to kind of like, move on from the celebration in the moment, or like maybe pausing and reflecting is something that we've talked about. I myself included, don't do enough.
Well, I think I'm good at celebrating and then leaving it in that space, like leaving it, just having a celebration, and then, okay, we still got to do work. Mm-hmm. Like next day you wake up and you got to go back to it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's just play some clips, and I'm sure you and I will have plenty to say as we go along.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be doing this weird audio engineering stuff, which is super rudimentary.
Basic.
Think of me as MacGyver in your audio ears right now. God. And I'm unrolling the duct tape, and I have my Swiss Army knife out.
There you go. That hair.
And my hair is
just
flowing.
A hot mess. Yeah, flowing in the wind.
And I'm looking to Margaret to tell me which. Do I start with analogy?
All right, we're going to start with analogies. So you had 4 different options to submit your voice memo, one of which was you could create an analogy about Finally Clicked, because Jesse is quite famous now for his analogies using animals specifically. Or you could submit, this was actually not an option, but people just did it.
Okay, go back to analogy for a second. I had one yesterday. Do you remember the one yesterday?
Oh, gosh. You definitely test my memory. Yesterday was about, oh, gosh, I remember you sitting there, and I can see you sitting there in the chair talking. We're talking with Jaggles, and I don't remember.
See, we got to write these things down.
We got to write it down.
But yeah, I mean, often I'll just have...
like you had called me a cloaked cat at one point, or a worker ant. You'd just things like that popped up in our statistician, or however you pronounce it. Statistician is going through our episodes and marking down all the different analogies that we've mentioned. And so it'll be cool to go back at that. But yes, this first one comes from Anna Parker out of Portland, Oregon area.
All right, let's see what Anna has to say.
Hey, Jesse and Margaret, this is Anna Parker from the McLeod Group Network at Keller Williams Capital City down in Salem, Oregon. Wanted to submit my Jesseism for the Finally Clicked podcast. And here's what I always think about when I listen to you guys, that the Finally Clicked podcast is like your favorite little Yenta grandma who always has the best and most basic advice and wisdom to share with you, that it always seems just too easy, too simple to be true or to work, and yet it always does. So thank you guys for just giving your really honest, down-to-earth assessment, wisdom, experience, because it always is helpful to get us back and focused and back to basics to have really strong, authentic, real businesses. So really appreciate what you guys do, and looking forward to seeing what's next.
Oh, Yenta grandma.
Basic. Hashtag basic with the Yenta grandma.
I know, basic. First, I would take offense, like I'm not a basic.
But basic means cool. Basic, like legit.
Right. Especially when you're talking about drops of wisdom.
Drops of wisdom.
Right?
Yeah, raindrops of wisdom.
And basic is good. Basic is accessible. I like how I'm convincing myself. No, I know what she means.
Yeah.
Jenny Slate is a comedian, and she has a new special out, and she kind of showcases, she's Jewish, and she has, she likes to talk about her grandmother a lot, and and that's who I picture as I think about Anna's analogy.
I love it.
Yeah, and
And it's funny, some of the other things coming up, the other voice memos coming up, kind of coordinate with Anna's in a way, what they reference and how they think of us. So I think you'll be amused.
Well, Anna, we appreciate your analogy.
Yes.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been compared to a Jewish grandmother in a while. And to be fair, Yenta, and this is my limited knowledge of Yiddish, but Yenta is not necessarily a Jewish woman. I think it is a Jewish woman who talks too much, that's the actual. So
okay.
I wouldn't say all Jewish women are Yantas, but maybe. I don't know. Maybe this is sticky. Maybe I shouldn't define anything that has, racial boundaries. So let's just accept it and move on.
Yes.
All right.
So the next category, which was not even a category, but just happened, was some people just wanted to submit feedback or their statement about Pickett Street, or about Finally Clicked, sorry. So this is...
Okay, before we jump there, do you have an analogy of this podcast and what it is?
I don't think I do yet. No, I've been marinating on it, kind of like a nice steak. I've been marinating with some Dales and some Chef It Up seasoning, and I've stuck that steak in the oven, and it's in my head right now, and I'm thinking about it and thinking about what that means to me. And when I can come back with something, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't leave it in there too long.
I know.
You don't want to.
No, medium rare is what I'm going for. Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So statements. It would. We better start with this one at the start. It's Mary Smythe. Mary Smith.
Mary Smith. Okay. Oh.
Hi, this is Mary Smith, and I wanted to do a review of the podcast Finally Clicked for Jesse D. Moore and Margaret Smith. I wanted to say that the first observation of a year now of the podcast is that you really get a glimpse into the soul of Pickett Street. You have shared so many stories, personal stories, and you've interviewed and shared with so many different people that you've met along the way during your adventures at Pickett Street. And it's really been wonderful to get to know each of those people and get kind of a mini glimpse into their lives. So that's been wonderful to have you share that. And also you've shared about building relationships with those individuals that you interviewed. So the way they've affected your lives at Pickett Street and the way that you've affected theirs. Let's see. I think through the podcast, you've also talked about the importance of being vulnerable and open with your lives. And I think both of you have shared a lot of very personal things on the podcast and really been honest about your journey. I appreciate that. And I think that's wonderful. I feel like in some ways, every time I listen to a podcast, I'm attending a mini workshop. So it's kind of a treat to be listening in the car, or listening from home, and learning something new each time. So love the podcast. Hope they continue. And I feel like they're an adventure, like taking the back roads where you have the opportunity to see things a little bit different and take things a little bit slower. And I really appreciate it. So keep it up. Finally clicked. I love it.
That's an enthusiastic response from Miss Mary Smith. She sounds lovely. She must be a beautiful person.
Dedicated listener.
Obviously a fan of ours.
For life.
I'm not sure where you're from, Mary Smith. I think you're from Edmonds, Washington. But I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Of course,
I like how she referenced the back roads.
I like how we're just going to have family members on the show to say good things about us.
Yes. It's very affirming.
Yeah. It's like the bar's pretty low on podcasting as it is. Like all you need is some basic equipment and then family members as your audience, and you're halfway there.
You're there.
You too.
You too can do this.
Could do this. My mom's going to be in town a week
there
from
you
now.
go. Let's get her
Can
on.
you imagine? That would be amazing.
Interesting. Yeah.
No, I would. That episode would never make it to air. Any thoughts about Mary Smith?
Well, I have to say, as a listener, she is definitely like she's outside the real estate industry, and obviously she's related to me. And though, what I have to say is my mom's never been an avid reader or anything. Like, she has picked up reading more since I've started with Pickett Street, actually. So for her to take the time to listen to the podcast episodes, it's not just because she loves me and she loves you, but she's actually interested, and things that we're talking about are actually really prodding her to think about things. And she actually submitted that via video because she didn't know how to do a voice memo, and so I could watch her as she was saying it. And she got emotional. And it's one thing to see your daughter, I think, do something like this, but then to have it prompt you to think as well. It's been really cool to see the conversations and how they change for her and I when we hang out together. So, and I like how she said it's like they get a peek into the soul of Pickett Street. I think it's really true. And you and I were just talking about this yesterday about how you got a text message the other day from someone who really got to see a different side of you. And that's one of the number one reasons why I wanted to do this. So I think my mom just reaffirmed that.
How does this change your conversations with your mom? You made reference to that.
Yeah. Well, when you have books that you've read together, like we have here on Pickett Street, and people that you've listened to together, like with Gary John Bishop as an example, it gives us an opportunity to talk about a subject that we wouldn't normally talk about, because she's heard him, I've heard him, and so I can reference things in the podcast. And so we talk about vulnerability in a different manner. And just as an example, like my mom's family, I think I've mentioned this before, like it's a different generation, that she and her sisters grew up in. And so my Aunt Carrie said something to me a year ago, actually. She said, it's like you've taken what you learned from us and actually applied it, and you are where I am now in your 30s. She said, I wish I was where you were now. And so it's really interesting to have them watch me. And it brings up different conversations, I guess I'd say, that I would normally not talk about with my mom. Vulnerability being one of them.
I think, you made reference to this at the very beginning. I do like how you've been able to incorporate the podcast episodes into your teaching.
Yes,
and
it's been super helpful.
You have people listen to the podcast or a few specific episodes. It's also been nice for answering those Gotta minutes that we get from people.
That's what I meant when I said at the beginning that I've used these for repeatable content. So when we talk about communication specifically, to send people that episode often answers their questions.
What did your mom think when you started working here and then you started reading? Like, it was mandatory. You had to read mandatory books and stuff.
I don't think either one of us thought much of it, because I've always been in a place where learning is a part of who I am. So before this, I wasn't reading these type of books, but I was reading constantly because I was in school. So I don't think either one of us thought that much of it. It was more the topic of the books that were brought up that I think she was probably like, well...
You have to remember, too, when you started here, you were living with your parents.
Yes, I was living with them. So I was going home and talking about it. And I brought home, like, The Energy Bus was one of the first books. And, Cult was what they thought.
Yeah.
But you made reference, you joked about that in our interview process. Because for me, coming from the nonprofit, corporate, bigger world, it felt cultish. And that's kind of what people have thought of when they think of Keller Williams. But you have to be on the inside to really understand.
Well, that's the new business model we're rolling out in 2020. We're going away from MREA, and we're going closer to the
Which
wilderness.
Makes a lot of sense based on like how you were raised and like things we've talked about.
Exactly. This city life is for the birds. We're going to find a nice warm desert. With
maybe a yurt.
Yeah, exactly. You're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah, I'm picking it up.
I think the yurt is highly scalable. Mm-hmm. I think we can drop ship it anywhere. Mm-hmm. And
we can park ourselves close to the Burning
Man. And the podcast we can do from anywhere. It'll
Yeah.
bring in, anyone that feels alienated and alone will flock to us. And we don't need to sell real estate anymore.
I know.
I can follow my dream of being a cult leader. And drive Rolls Royces. Cult leaders will make way more than successful real estate agents, really.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, are we ready for the second statement?
Let's do it.
Sorry for the pause. It's like I'm It's like I'm pushing. Oh, geez, see? It's like you probably don't remember this. I remember, okay, I'm in my room. I'm like maybe 11 years old, 12 years old. And I'm starting to listen to music my parents don't listen to, right?
Yeah.
Because where I grew up, again, there was 2 radio stations. One was played country music, and I had Kick Country Store, where people tried to sell. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, you've referenced that with me before.
There's a show idea. Like, I want to create a TV show or a radio show or something where it's like based on the people that call into these radio stations and try to sell their old like tires and stuff.
Yeah, you've joked about that with me.
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's the worst programming of all time. So instead of listening to that, I would listen to the one pop music radio station we had. And then, but if you liked a song, like I had to like listen for it. I had to have a tape loaded. I had to have a dual deck tape deck
to record it
with the radio on.
Oh
and then I had to have a tape like ready to go. And then if I heard a song, I'd have to wait for the DJ to stop talking and then hit play. And they always like talked over the intro, right?
Yeah.
Like the first 5-10 seconds of a song. And I'm like, shut up. And, and then I'd record it right till the very end. And that's how I created mixtapes for me to listen to.
Wow.
That's kind of what I'm doing now with these clips.
Like that,
it's like I won't go into the whole thing, but it's ridiculous. Okay, let's try this again.
Hey, Finally Clicked listeners. Bella Williams here. I'm a real estate agent out in Burlington, Vermont. Woohoo! I recently met Mo and felt like she totally spoke to my soul. So, needless to say, I was really excited to discover Finally Clicked podcast. I love this podcast. The Jesse and Mo duo are like naturopathic doctors of real estate. And now that I've said that out loud, I do hear how ridiculous it sounds. But I really mean it. For those who aren't familiar with naturopathic medicine, it's the use of wisdom and nature combined with modern science to heal your mind, body, and spirit. And I just really love that Finally Clicked speaks to our businesses, knowing that we are our businesses. They see that in order for business to succeed, that we have to succeed. And I just love that they found the humanity in our careers and really speak to that. So yeah, thanks a ton. And I can't wait to hear the next one.
I like that analogy because I feel like as I become a cult leader, I think having a naturopathic background could really help me.
It could very much help.
I think it's very synergistic. It ties into the wilderness and to getting back to nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lack of communication and broadcasting is probably key to keep the followers stunted. But naturopathic remedies, I think, are going to be very important. I'm steeped in naturopathic remedies. I wish I could tell you all the stories. They're so not appropriate to tell because my family would disown me.
We might have to do a special episode just.
Oh, I wish I could tell them.
For release.
Just how closely tied to the naturopathic world I am.
Well, I think it's interesting that already we've just heard from a few people, and naturopathic doctor, Soul, and Yenta have been brought up, which is
right.
Like,
Goodness, snake oil salesman's right behind. Is that what's next?
Yeah, Bella is darling though. She was sitting in my class in Vermont, and she didn't say much during the class, but she messaged me afterwards, and we've just been connecting over intuition and social media because she said that she just felt like she was going through a hard time. Oh no. Sorry. And she's going through a hard time and not sure how much to share on social media. And so I talked a little bit about like that you don't have to share your whole life on social media. Just sharing the pieces that connect with people, right?
Not your entire life. Those people that share their entire lives, they're the best and they're the worst.
Yeah, yeah. It's like reality TV.
I just drew your attention to someone like that today, right?
Yes.
And I was like, what is happening? Like, you're so out of touch with reality that you don't understand that it's
important to stay grounded. Yeah.
Obsessive.
Yeah. But no, I've really enjoyed connecting with Bella, so I was happy when she submitted a voice memo.
And Bella's a darling name.
Isn't it darling?
What
I know. She's
name.
Darling. I told her, I said, when you're coming to Seattle.
She's got some followers, too.
She does. She has some. She's a serious, influencer. Mm-hmm.
All right. For our next statement.
Finally Clicked to me is about community. Jesse and Mo.
Do you want to introduce who this is?
Yeah, this one does not have to be, was thinking of, there's a couple that are, yeah. So this is Shanna Niemi, and she is with John L. Scott in Mukilteo, Washington.
All right.
Finally Clicked to me is about community. Jesse and Mo are so knowledgeable and are willing to put themselves out there and share their stories, and you want to listen. They have phenomenal guests like Susan Scott, Mara Gleason, Vanessa Rosenblum, and Anise Kavanaugh. All are remarkable, and I would have never heard of them had it not been for Finally Clicked. When you listen to Jesse and Mo, you get a sense of what it's like to be in their world, and you want to be part of it. I cannot wait for what this next year brings. I share this podcast often. I love listening to them. I laugh a lot, and I look forward to hearing more. Thanks.
Shauna was very nervous about submitting a voice memo, and I'm so glad that she did, because she's one of those people who hasn't yet realized her power entirely. I'm serious. This is serious.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to laugh. I just am imagining Margaret dressed like Xena, the warrior princess. And as she reaches out to Shanna and saying, "Come into your power." Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to come into your power?
That's kind of what it's like.
Oh my gosh, you are priming me for this cult thing. Like, you're not kidding around.
This is serious business. This is serious.
Today's episode, how to come into your power. Oh my gosh, I'm becoming everything I was raised to hate.
Yeah, I'm like, great. Oh my God. Oh, so funny. The next one does not have a name attached to it.
All right. Random listener.
It's our last statement.
Well, it's going to take me a second. I've got to flub this up, once or twice before
Yeah, right.
we get there. Well, the problem is I want it to load all the way, and then it starts autoplay. All right, let's go.
All right, here it is, Jesse Mo. Love you guys. Finally Clicked is one of the most real and authentic business conversations you'll ever hear. Jesse and Margaret not only lead with an insane amount of knowledge and experience and passion, but it's likely they have studied the art and science between the relationship of rainmaker and executive assistant more than anyone I've come across. The conversation is fierce and arguably uncomfortable at times, but when isn't life a little uncomfortable? Our society tosses around the catchphrase raw and real all too often. Finally Clicked is that and more. I don't care if you're in business or just looking to grow as a person. This podcast has something for everyone. I have learned so much about business, relationships, and Montana ranch life thanks to Jesse and Margaret, and frankly, their podcast has become one of the best parts of my week. I can't thank them enough for having the courage to have this conversation, first amongst themselves, and secondly, to share it with all of us. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I grew up on a ranch in Montana.
If you're just listening today for the first time ever, and you missed the other 58 episodes.
I think there's definitely a tie-in to my analogies and how I grew up.
Absolutely.
Because I was horseback by myself for so many hours. And then I'd be like trying to entertain myself, which is not easy. Like if you're on a horse for like 2 to 5 hours, you kind of run out of witty things to say about 10 minutes in.
It would be an interesting research project if you put 10 kids on a ranch and did that with them for years.
How many would end up like Jesse?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to have a certain whirlwind of chaotic moments.
Yes.
Early in life to end up like me. That was nice. Thank you.
That was very nice.
Anonymous, sir.
Anonymous
We
person.
appreciate it.
I loved how he phrased at the end there, though, and it's true, the conversations that you and I were brave enough to have by ourselves and then to put them out.
It's like Susan Scott says in Fierce Conversations. Every conversation I have with myself, and sometimes I involve other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was nice, man. I'm just like
Some good feedback. You can just
I know.
revel in that.
I'm telling you, if I'm ever down, I have to tell you, for those of you that are not in the Seattle, Washington area, it's like apocalyptic outside.
It's a little bit dark, yeah.
It's more than a little bit dark. It's like the sun has gone down, and it's like dusk outside, and it's midday. It's not even noon. We're recording this, and it looks like a Stephen King novel outside. And I'm so glad to be warming myself by the fire of your guys' thoughts. It's pretty awesome.
It's a good image.
All right, you want to jump to questions? Future questions or questions? Are we answering these questions as we go?
So I think if we feel inclined to answer a few as we go, we can. But these are questions that people have posed for us for 2020.
All right. So we're going to just play some questions. Some we'll answer, some we won't.
I can tell you this first one is Amanda Condyles.
Is this like...
Condyles.
Is this like a Clips episode from Friends, where they're like...
Yes.
It's not you're not going to get entirely new content. We're going to like set you up and then we'll show you all the episodes where Joey was silly.
Yes.
And talked about food.
It's exactly like that.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a clip show?
Yeah.
It is? Do you like clip shows?
I am liking this right here.
I know, but most people hate clip shows. Like if you're getting ready for you're going to hear a new episode.
Yeah.
But I guess this is all new clips. These are not old. We're not repeating.
Oh, yeah.
Old
No,
clips.
they're new. Yeah.
All right. That's better.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And I'm sorry, did you want to try to pronounce Amanda's name for the 5th time?
Amanda Condyles.
What?
I always get it wrong, but that's how she's told me to pronounce it.
It sounds like you're verbally hopping from one syllable to the next.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. But you know what? She's going to laugh when she hears this.
All right. Okay.
Happy birthday finally clicked. I can't believe it's already been a year since you two crazies got on the air together and formed this incredible podcast. Totally focused around leadership, success, diving in, and growth. I love it. I think we can all say that we're so thankful for your wit, your humor, the joy you bring, and Margaret's laugh, all of us. So I wanted to answer pose a question to you guys about a personal or business challenge for the year 2020. So what I'm most curious about as I'm developing my 2020 growth plan is how you guys get super, super intentional about a work-life balance, meaning how do you find the time to still play hard when you work hard? And would love to hear you guys answer this from both personal and perspective, because I know it's something we all struggle with. Anyways, happy birthday finally clicked. We love you and we're excited for a whole nother year. Bye, guys.
All right, Amanda, thank you. I have to say, one of the things, unintended consequences of the podcast has been, we're interviewing. I think it's fine for me to say that we're interviewing Amanda right now for Pickett Street, and I don't know if Jagels would be working for us without the podcast. Quite honestly, I think the podcast kind of hooked Jagels back into into us. She was at a different office, different team, and maybe not, maybe so, right? And then as we interview Amanda. I just think it's attracting culturally. Sure. It makes it easier for us to attract the right person.
Well, they're getting to know us through this, so.
Oh, they're getting to know us.
Absolutely.
No, well, I think the culture is the thing that really shines through.
Absolutely, yeah. The
reality is that while Margaret and I have these conversations and they're easygoing and they're fun, that's true with every member of the team for the most part. It's just Margaret's a little better on the mic than some people, including myself. But anyway, whatever. All right. So work-life balance 2020.
And I don't know if you want to, but you can play the second question because it has to do with the same thing.
Oh, does it?
It does.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah had the same question. Let's hear what Hannah has to say.
This is Hannah Ranch, by the way.
Hannah Ranch.
From Pam Ranch's.
Did she grow up on a ranch?
She might have.
How do I do it all? How do I succeed in my goals at the office, at work, and also be able to hang out with my friends, my family, work out, eat healthy, go shopping, everything all at once? I feel like that's my biggest struggle.
All right. I like both these questions, and I feel like we are uniquely qualified to answer them. Do you want me to just
Are we going to dive
this?
into this? Yeah. You dive in first. I think we could do a whole nother episode on this in the future, too.
Oh, can you write that down?
Yeah.
Well, man, do I want to give away the good stuff now then? Or do we just table it?
I'll absolutely give a teaser, for sure.
Teaser?
Yeah.
Before we came in here, I was looking at dates I can get away in January. And I have a trip planned for the latter half of April to Bali, which I'm looking forward to. And most people would say that would be enough. Like, a trip to Bali is kind of a big deal. I know myself and I know my family, and they would kick me out of the house if I didn't schedule something between now and then, because I need that. I know myself, and I know that in order to work hard and to put in the hours and make some sacrifices that I make, I have to pay myself. And I pay myself in travel, in vacations, in worldly experiences, expanding my mind and my perspective, and kind of allowing the day-to-day to fall off of me and allowing me to think about things from a bigger and more global perspective. So, Amanda, what I would say to you is I would schedule, as you make your plans, I would schedule a vacation every 4 months. It doesn't have to be a big vacation, even if it's just a getaway locally, but it's for 2 to 3 days. Definitely, I would recommend doing that every 4 months. That's what I need. I need every 4 months. If haven't taken a trip, I get antsy and I get hard to be around. And so I do it for not only for my mental health, but for the relationships of the people that are close to me as well. And then Hannah, for your question, how do you fit it? How do you do it all? How do you fit it all in? I would say get up earlier, for one. Margaret has been a great proponent of this over the past year. She absolutely gets up earlier in the morning, and she gets the important stuff done first. And this week I was up 3 times at 5:15 in the morning to get my workout in and to be able to fit in the important elements that I haven't always made time for. But when I've been most successful has been when I get up 3 to 4 mornings a week before 5:30 in the morning. What do you think, Mo?
Yes, the only other thing I would add to that, and that's why I think we could do a whole episode on this, is prioritization. So when I think of Hannah, I don't know Hannah very well, but one of the first things I always think of is, how are you prioritizing things in your life? Because there's always going to be 1,000,002 different things that I could do. But once you prioritize and kind of cut out some of the things that aren't really providing you with much value or aren't adding to your life, then it becomes really clear and easy. So that's by spending more time with myself and focused in the morning on things that I want to do. I've gotten a lot of clarity around how I want to spend my time, and it's helped alleviate a lot of anxiety over mostly people, because people take time. So whether that's having dinner with people or being in certain groups, or when you cut that out, all of a sudden you're left with more time. And so my question to you would be, what's most important to you to be doing in your life? Because right now it sounds like there's 12 different things. And if I had to guess, I'd guess there's really not more than 3 or 4 that you should be spending your time with.
This goes back to know thyself as well.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that if I don't get my workout done first thing in the morning, my ability to talk myself out of it goes up exponentially with every passing hour.
Amen. Yeah.
And then the other part of that, I think, too, is when it comes to prioritization, you have to think about a lot of different things. And to me, what I think about is, I've talked a lot about this year. I took this year to figure out my back and what is actually going on with my back and how to fix it and how to make some changes. And because I didn't know what was wrong, I was afraid to do a lot of things. But now that I am empowered with knowledge of what is wrong, I know how I can augment my workouts and everything else. And so working out is important for me because, you don't want to have a bunch of cortisol running through your veins. And so if you're stressed out, working out helps me relieve that stress. If I don't work out, I take it out on my friends and my family.
Yeah.
And they're like, geez, you're fun to be around. And so working out puts me in a better mood. And then I I think getting up early is just a good discipline for a couple different reasons, and I'll speak for myself. It doesn't keep me from doing fun things.
Mm-hmm.
I took my entire family to a Lucas Graham concert this week. It's probably the highlight of the last 6 months for me and my kids and my family. It was just a perfect night, and it was their first concert. It was 10 rows from the stage. It was their first indoor concert. They've been to a bunch of outdoor concerts. And I didn't get home until about midnight, 11:30, and I had a 5:15 wake-up call to go work out.
Yeah.
And I don't like to sacrifice sleep. Sleep's very important for your health. In fact, sleep is one of the things you should not sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
But to honor my commitment, to my family, I stayed up until 11:30/midnight. And then to honor my commitment for working out, I got up at 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one day in my life, and I had to make up for it. I had to make sure I went to bed earlier the night after that,
mm-hmm.
and I slept in the next day, but I was up again the next day after that at 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
So you can fit everything in. You just have to get up earlier, perhaps, and prioritize and make sure the most important things get done first.
Yeah, I think somebody sent me a quote this week that was really awesome. It said, hang on, let me read it directly. But it was essentially about getting uncomfortable, and it had to do with the universe, which if you know me, you all know that I'm interested in that. It said, I had to make you uncomfortable, otherwise you never would have moved. The universe. And that is, when I talk about why I started getting up earlier, it's literally because my level of discomfort was growing to such an extent that I knew I had to take action. So sometimes when people are like, how do you decide what to do? How do you decide when? And I'm just like, get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Get yourself to a place where you're not okay with where you're at. Because if you're just complacent and just letting the days go by with nothing particularly exciting or happening for you, I don't do well with complacency. I'm good with taking a break. I can absolutely break from things, but there's too much opportunity and there's too much joy to be had.
I think another thing I would tell Hannah is to examine her peer groups, because
that's a great one.
If you're looking at the 5 people you hang around most and you're the average of those 5 people, what is that? Where's that level you out at?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you that sometimes you have to change your peer group if they're going out to bars and doing karaoke until midnight, and that's impeding your ability to do what you want to do in the morning. Then find some new friends that are doing different things. And again, I'm not sacrificing on the things that are important to me, that are fun. I'm still doing those things, but maybe I'm doing them less because I realize that I can't just have fun all the time.
It's different for every person. If going out with those people at night if those are people you want to connect with, then awesome. But what I found was that there was a lot of excessive activities that I was just doing to make those people happy.
Yeah.
And so as an example, because I've been digging into myself and learning as much as I can about myself, something else I realized in the last 2 weeks was that I don't have more than 2 people right now who feed me or give me energy, essentially. There's very few people I spend time with where I don't feel depleted or I feel like I'm receiving something.
Right.
And not that I need to receive from everybody. However, I am naturally inclined to be the person to give. And I have to stop because it's not serving me or the people or Pickett Street or Finally Clicked or really anybody. Because it's slowly, then suddenly depleting me. And it's not taking me in the direction I want to go, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, I think you should examine your life and your priorities and what you do every day, and do they all put you in the direction you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
There's a few things I've changed in my life recently, and I think I'm in a better mood because of it. I think I'm healthier because of it. So I'm focused on those things.
Yeah.
All right.
That was a good one.
Next question.
We'll follow that up with probably another episode. This is Sam Oberlies from Arizona.
The culture on your team seems very, very inspirational. So I'm curious, as you guys have grown, how have you maintained that culture? Or if it has slipped, what did you learn from it? I think right now we're on a 3-person team, and so it's super close-knit, and we all just kind of get each other. And I do know in the future that's not going to always be the case as we diversify and grow. So what are you guys doing now that ensures that you have great culture in the future? Or what have you guys maybe done in the past that has hurt your culture?
Man, I have a lot of thoughts about this. We do have a great culture on our team. Here's what I wish. I wish having a great culture meant you had great production all the time. And that's not how it works. I would say there is a lag time between having a great culture and then seeing the impact of that in your production, in your sales, in your profitability. So we have, since Margaret joined the team, I would say we've had a good culture on this team. And I mean, I was responsible for it with the leaders of the team, the other partners I had at the time. And we brought Margaret in, and I was clear with Margaret that I wanted her to be how I wanted her to show up, because I had someone who wasn't showing up very well on a regular basis. And I was kind of tired of being the one that was responsible for the culture all the time. And so I was good about setting expectations with Margaret that said, hey, I need, and I knew what I needed. Like, I know myself, and I tend to be sad and tragic sometimes. And I need someone to offset that. We've definitely messed with the culture in good ways and bad ways. In bad ways, I would say that I want everyone to hear this next part. I think if you're an entrepreneur or you're a rainmaker, I hope everybody gives you a lot of grace, because you are doing something that's very difficult, and it's probably something you haven't done before, and you don't know what you don't know. So you're doing this, and you're trying to do the best job you can. If you're successful, you're trying to deal with success and some of the symptoms that come along with that. If you're not successful, you're dealing with the stress of that, and you're dealing with the symptoms of being stressed out. I mean, being a rainmaker is very lonely sometimes. Often, it's very lonely. It's very stressful. You feel a little bit untethered at times. And so I think for me as a rainmaker, the important part of the culture for me has actually been in educating myself how to be a better leader. Because if I just acted like myself, man, I wouldn't have anyone around me. So the culture, we're very mindful of it, and we're very strategic about it. We have we've had talented people. We've had more people. We've had talented people that have messed with the culture. The people most likely to mess with your culture are the most talented people on your team. And that's why it's so hard to get rid of them. But we've learned from that. And we've learned we're willing to be wrong. I would say we made 2 hires this year that we weren't absolutely sure about. And one of them washed out right away. And we let him, we dealt with it right away. And the other one is coming into his own and doing great. And so you have to roll the dice sometimes. You're not going to know everything about somebody.
No.
So you have a few standards that you look to measure against. And then you treat that, after you hire them, you're dating, you're not married. And so you're using the next 100 days to verify that you want these people on your team. And you pay attention to how they show up. You pay attention to the impact they have on other people. And that's when we let go of that person, is because we need the impact on another member of our team who's highly valued. It became clear that the impact was negative for her. And so that made it easy. We've had to stop and reset before, many times, more times than I want to admit. And quite honestly, it's so funny. Sometimes I feel like a fraud doing the podcast because, and Margaret knows this, like I would teach more classes and I would do more things, but I want the results to be more. I'm working on the results. I'm working on the productivity, and I'm excited that when that reaches a certain point, then I'll feel validated, I guess, a little bit. Because I don't want to be a snake oil salesman. I don't want to be a cult leader. I don't want to be someone who says the right things but doesn't do the right things, or says the right things but doesn't have the fruit that comes from that. And so the culture thing, there's a lead time and a leg time. And we have a great culture. We have great team members right now, and we're growing. And I feel really good about everyone we have in place, and I feel good that we'll add the right people to our team, and we'll be able to do that up until everybody has, like me and Margaret and someone else has 3 or 4 direct reports. So I'd say we could easily be like a 15-member team, and it could still be this way. So we're very pointed, we're very diligent, and culture is probably more important to us than anything else. And I will cut production to make sure that the culture is right. Because I'm building a rocket ship, and I want it to go far. And I don't want it to just flame out 10 feet in the air. So I have a bunch of engineers working on this rocket ship. And so until everybody is matchy on culture and matchy on talent, and we're all doing the right thing and moving this ship in the right direction, I think you'll see our production level up as a part of that. I'm already seeing that happen in the fourth quarter of this year, which the fourth quarter can be a little bit scary for us because real estate is cyclical, seasonal, despite what some sales experts might tell you. It's good to be prepared, and right now I feel like I don't have to carry the team by myself. Everyone's carrying their load, and man, is that better than the alternative.
Yeah, I think, and in addition to that, all I would say is that I think we've spent the last 7 years looking for partners. And so I think with culture, you can't depend on one person. So yes, I may have helped build it, but every person that joins the team, my expectation is that they carry that culture on their own 2 legs. So that when we do expand, because expansion has been something that we've talked about, that person is their own source of light in a different location.
Their own source of light.
So
we're looking for 1,000 points of light. We should change the
I'm
name.
looking for another tungsten light person.
Instead of Pickett Street, we're points of light properties.
But I think that's incredibly important because when I talk about being a helicopter mom, I talk about that in my class, and I've talked about it on the podcast as a failure of mine. It was me trying to control and me trying to make other people into what I was or what I thought I was, which was someone to carry the culture. And yes, I will always be, for sure, the one to lead by example, the one to take the action when others don't want to. I think leading by example is how you develop the culture. But we need every other team member to be as equally strong and believe just as much as you and I do about everything. And I think that is the basis for culture, is when everybody believes in the mission, vision, values, and they live it, and they're able to be a part of a team and also have their own light to shine, which is something that listeners have pointed out about us, is that yes, we are a team, and Jessica, I think, said this the other day, our buyer's agent, we each have our own kind of like talent and piece that we bring to the puzzle. So I think that I don't think we can expand and grow into another city, even if it's 30 minutes away, until we have that person who's going to live and breathe our culture in a different space.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this. Jessica Townsell, who is our buyer's agent, if you're listening and you're in front of your computer, go to Facebook and friend request her, because I want you to see her message, her post that she put up today. And so it's Jessica, and then Townsell is TOWNSEL, 1 L. And she just put I just watched it before I came in here, and it's just her on video saying, hey, if you're going through a hard time, I want you to know you're not alone. And if you're going through a hard time, this is one thing that has really helped me when I've gone through a hard time. And I thought it was, what a great example of how she is shaping her own culture. Not only on the team, but with her friends and family. And then another thing I thought of when you were talking right then is, and I think this is a hack, and it's going to be hard for some rainmakers to hear and harder for them to implement. The one of my superpowers is allowing people to fail. Like I will coach them and I tell them what to do. And if they fail to hear me or they fail to do it, I'll let them fail rather than saving them or taking it from them. And we've had that happen in the last 10 days where we let someone fail at something. And you know what? The impact of that was he kind of picked himself up by the bootstraps and he learned a few valuable lessons, and then he turned that whole situation around and got something under contract. So it's cost me money, and it's cost me time, and it's cost me a lot of stress, probably some hair. But I think it's important that if you're going to be a leader on a team and you don't want it to be the one doing everything all the time, that you really do let people succeed and fail on their own without you. At some point, you have to take the training wheels off, and everyone's going to fall down. Everyone's going to skin a knee. You just know it.
Yeah.
And you know that if you have kids and you've taught them how to ride a bike, good luck doing it where they don't fall down. And what kind of lesson is that?
Yeah.
Like, my bonus son learned how to ride his bike this year. And last year I taught him. And my back made it almost impossible, but he would ride like 50 feet on his own. But that's a tough thing. I think teaching a kid how to ride a bike for the first time is an amazing life lesson.
Yeah.
Not only for the kid, but for you as a parent. Because, man alive, you're just sitting there and you're just like, oh, please just try this one thing. And everything in their body is vibrating to say no. The peril of riding a bike, falling 18 inches or 20 inches or whatever, it's like, it's so hard coded into us that how to avoid danger.
Yeah.
So
that's really a good example.
All right, I skipped over one. That's Rebecca's.
That's what I was thinking.
Probably.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
This rudimentary way of doing it. Rube Goldberg. That's what it's called. That's what that thing is.
Oh my gosh.
This is like a Rube Goldberg machine. See, isn't that random? I didn't look it up. It just came out of my head.
That's usually how it happens.
All right, here we go.
Hey there, finally clicked. Margaret and Jesse. This is Becca Galligani. Checking in on a voice memo question for y'all. My question for you guys that I'd love for you to help me to answer in 2020 is, how do you build a culture of a company where everyone around you has found their joy, such that their joy is infused in their work and therefore helps other people in their organization and in their business or their clients to find joy? I am really focused in 2020 on ensuring that everyone that I work with has found their joy and is working in their joy by ensuring that I have found mine and continue to fine-tune my joy and make sure that I have it really down well for me and continuing to work on it daily, such that I am just a shining example of what it looks like to find joy in your work and to share that with others organically just by being joyful, happy, content, passionate, and mostly happy. So what I would love to hear from you both is, how would someone in your mind do that? How would you suggest they start? What are some exercises or conversations or books or podcasts that someone who has that as a goal would start? Where would they start? So that is my question for Finally Clicked. How do you find and live in your joy?
I have so many jokes running through my head right now, but I'm not going to
say at least one.
No, I can't do it. I was going to say something, like, find your joy or get the off this team.
Find your joy. Be so happy.
Hey, Don't come in here until you find your joy. I don't want to see your face.
Oh my gosh.
No, I have.
It's kind of like a drop the mic
I think
question.
you have the most answers for this.
The most answers?
I'll do my quick answer because I think you should speak on this the most. But and Jessica being a great example of this. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I find joy in freedom, and I find joy in accomplishment. So I think goals are a great way to find joy, and I say that because they're measurable. If you don't like you don't like your life, you don't like an aspect of your life, write a goal, or set a goal, write it down, and implement, act on it. And then as you start to knock goals down, joy follows. I don't know. It's like a video game where you conquer the enemy and you get a coin. Mm-hmm. So think of goals that way. Like when you conquer them, you get some joy. You get a piece of that back. And then when you've accomplished a bunch of goals in different areas of your life, that's a joyful life. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Mo?
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this. I think oftentimes people get caught up in the idea that joy lasts for minutes, hours, days, months, weeks, years. Kind of went backwards there. But I think they think it's like a, they think it's a prolonged feeling, and you get caught up thinking, oh, I should feel joyful every day, all the time. And it's just not natural. If I was on a high like that for weeks, it would be like it's not possible. So the joy is in the journey. Now it sounds so cliche.
Oh, let's put that on a distressed piece of wood and sell it.
But like Jesse said, when I talk to people about, because my never-ending question for the longest time was, where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to be? What's my purpose? And
such a fun question to hear from you all the time.
Right? And Jesse knows that I pose this constantly. And I was talking to Pam Ranch just the other day on our Instagram for Pickett Street, and she said something that is very much how I think now, which is, as long as I'm always striving to understand myself and striving for something different, some sort of different experience, then that's the joy for me. So, like, we'll hear another listener coming up here who submitted a voice memo, and she said something about fear and how I make fear fun. And as much as I didn't realize before how much I kind of love the adrenaline rush of doing something for the first time that I've never done. And so I'm now like addicted to it because it brings more joy into my life. And so I think how you find your joy is by doing as many things as you can that you've never done before. So that's what I started doing about 7 years ago when I joined this team. Was I was exposed to different books and different people. So then obviously different ideas and things are presented to me. And instead of hesitating and thinking about which one I should do, I did them all to figure out which ones I liked. And then the more you figure out what you like, the more you can do it. And the more doors that open for you and the different opportunities that present themselves. And that is where I've found my joy, is going from one thing to the next and always looking for a new person who could present me with a new idea.
All right. I would also just say, that there's a cliche or a saying that's comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
And so I know this gratitude stuff, people talk about it a lot, but it's real, it's true. And that is, if you're comparing yourself or your station in life to someone else's Facebook page, like, it's hard to be joyful. And the reality is I talked about this a little bit and ranted about how spoiled and entitled we are as Americans because we are complaining about the dumbest stuff, I hope people get to see third world countries and how different people have grown up. And you know what? We have a lot of people struggling in the United States that I don't even have to say it that way. I can just say, hey, go to the poorest parts of our country and you'll find a lot to be grateful for. Go to the poorest part of your community. I know for a fact I could take certain people through certain areas locally and it'll change your perspective because we just choose.
Oh yeah.
You have to make a series
joy.
of decisions.
Yeah.
And you live and we live and die based off the consequences of our decisions.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't take anything lightly or for granted.
Yeah. I think that her second part to that question too, how do you help others do that? And it's by taking the first step yourself. I just thought of that as you were talking, like it's about doing something and inspiring somebody to do the same thing.
And you just have to show up.
Just
you
show
have
up.
To be.
Yes.
Like if you're Margaret's fan club is a little ridiculous. The amount of people, it's a conveyor belt of
conveyor belt.
It is. It's a conveyor belt of your fan base comes by my door every day and sits and talks to you and wants to feel, it's like they're all these like stray cats that come in looking for their chin to be rubbed by Margaret. And I get it. And but the reason that you attract these people is because they see something in you and that's dynamic and attractive. And you're not going out there and telling people to be better, do better. You're just you. And that's infectious. So, I mean, that's the thing Gandhi said, right? Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what you do.
Absolutely. That's totally what I try to live up to.
You can't tell someone, hey, read this book. Like, that's the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
I have all these friends. I wish they would read the books we talk about.
Yeah.
I know it would impact their lives.
Yeah.
But they're going to have an attitude about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to work.
Yeah.
They have to find it on their own.
Yeah.
And if I keep talking about these books and I keep talking about these concepts and people continue to see that I am more joyful in my life or I'm more productive and successful or whatever.
That's exactly what starts the conversation for people with me is they see my change and the things that I'm doing through social media, which is why I love that avenue. And that is what provokes the conversation. And so one of the questions I got at an event a couple weeks ago that we had with Monique Hellstrom in Seattle was from a guy who said, how do you go home and, have the same kind of support and encouragement, or like, how do you involve the people at home in what you're learning so that they're on the same page that you're at? And we talk about this with people's spouses that are here on Pickett Street, having them read the same book. But he said, how do you do that? And I looked at him, I said, you don't force them to read or ask them. You don't even ask them. You just sit there and you listen to them. And by being present with people, eventually they get to the point where they turn to you and they're like, well, you haven't said anything about yourself. And that invites them to hear you. Yep. So as much as we want to give a book to someone and have them read it, a lot of it is just about being the example until they ask you the question. Yeah.
All right. This caller is from Montana.
Oh.
Let's see what Montanans have to say.
Sometimes you're put in situations where you have to work with a leader or somebody who you didn't choose and you can't get away from. What do you do with a leader who is volatile and won't take feedback? Do you continue on and just cut your losses at the end of the project, or do you try to build relationship and grow from that with them?
You do you, boo.
That is Gwyneth Lang from Montana.
You can't change other people, right? You can only control you. So if that's the truth, then you're in control of the situation. Carve a path out of it. I don't see a situation. I mean, trying to think of if I have a different perspective than this, but you know what? I can think of half a dozen rainmakers off the top of my head who have a revolving door of people that go through their organization. And for the life of them, they can't keep an admin, they can't keep a sales agent, and they may as well rinse and repeat because this is what's going to happen from now until the end of time, until they change something and they're not willing to change something. The worst type of leader is a person who thinks that they have it all figured out. They're the ones that know the best. No one can do it like they can. They're the reason for the success in the company.
Yeah.
If these things describe your leader, I'd be looking for a new job. I'm not gonna mince my words.
Yeah. No, that's
life's too short.
Yeah. When I think of the word volatile, and so what I would do before I decided to leave is I would confront that person using the confrontations dialogue that Susan Scott recommends, and I would confront them with compassion, because several examples that just came to mind for me in Susan's book are when leaders are particularly volatile, there's usually, or just humans in general, there's a reason. They've been hurt. And so one way that you can catch them off guard is if you ask them about themselves. And, hey, I noticed this about you. How are you feeling? Or like, has something happened that you'd like to share? And usually when you catch people off guard like that, and it's very like based from a compassionate and empathetic point of view, you might get an opportunity to help them build some self-awareness. Because the one thing I've told a lot of admin and a lot of people that are in different industries and different jobs is that as much as it is the job of a leader to lead, sometimes we have to lead up from the ranks. So sometimes it's our job to inform someone when something is not hitting the team well, or it's not hitting the people well, or it's not. And the fact of the matter is, me as an example myself, I don't know when I'm doing something wrong or doing something that impacts somebody in an inappropriate way. If they don't tell me, how will I know? And that's one of the conversations that you and I have had a lot is it was really hard for me in the beginning to bring anything to you, because I'm not used to that kind of partnership where I actually tell you things. And so before anybody leaves any position, I always challenge them, because there are several people, like I can think of 5 right now, who I have challenged to have at least met with the leader before they leave the organization, and it didn't happen. And I'm sorry, but that's not doing your job.
Well, there's definitely a difference between writing the script in your head,
yes,
and someone legit being a volatile or bad leader.
Yeah.
That being said, have I ever been a volatile leader?
Volatile is not a word that I would use for you.
But I mean, there's been a time or two.
Oh, sure. There was times in the beginning.
In 7 years, it's only been like a time. There's been a couple extreme circumstances where my anger got the better of me.
Oh, sure. And
it was situational for sure.
And I talk about that with people when they come to me with questions, or I talk about it briefly in my class, that sometimes people forget. They hear us on the podcast and they think we just got to this place immediately. And I tell them about the times when I've really had to push through. There were plenty of times when I could have said bye-bye and I'll see you later, but I chose to stay because I saw the end goal and I saw the vision and I saw what was possible. And I knew that in that moment, like I've said before, that was not Jesse.
Well, and I again, one of my superpowers is I know I can mess up and I apologize.
Yeah.
So I think that's if you're working for this leader and they never apologize.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Like I apologize all the time. I own my shit.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
So doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean I'm not volatile. I have been before. But thankfully I figured out I had a good coach in the beginning who helped me understand that I didn't want to lose talent after I found them. And he helped me create a culture of longevity. And that most of that change that was needed to be done by me. So, all right. Thank you, Montana caller. All right. This is a former member of the team stepping up to ask a question.
Finally clicked. Congratulations. In just your first year, you have put out some truly exceptional content. You should be very proud of yourselves. In 2020, I would love to hear some tips on efficiencies for being a great leader without being in the same room as the team all the time. How can the team feel supported and on a unified vision with the leader if the leader is not in the room with them more than 15 hours a week? Thank you.
Such a great speaking voice, that one. Jillian Farrar. Such a fabulous speaking voice she has in 2020.
Thanks for taking a break from recording your audiobook to ask us a question. So this is an intriguing question that I don't know the answer to right off the top of my head. I know it's situational for Jillian to some degree right now. Leading from a distance. I don't know if we're the right people to answer that question. We're very, in fact, every member of this team, it's important that you are in the office every day. Like we tell people that. Like we we're very communal as a team.
Yeah, but I mean, still, we're not in the same room with everybody. So
Yeah.
I think we can answer it.
We're like right down the hall.
Yes, but it's very different from being in the room. It totally is. Like, there's a reason why we've talked about this before, but when I moved Sarah Trotsky in with me, it was because I knew that if she was with me in the same room, she would learn that much faster 5 years ago, because she was sitting in the buyer's team office for a little bit. So, I mean, there's something to be said. So I think kind of like going back to Sam's question about expansion and how you grow the culture when you expand out of the area, having consistent weekly team meetings, which people don't do, is a part of building the culture and also a part of having standard times when you're around people. So some people do daily meetings. We do a weekly team meeting and then your weekly 411 or goal setting meeting with the person. And so in the beginning, there is more time spent in the same room with them. You're, doing training and they're shadowing you and things like that. But as time goes on, it's just, I think, being consistent with the things that we do every week, and helping them learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. So assuming we've hired someone who is self-motivated and driven to do so.
Okay. I also think that the weekly meeting would be a big part. Mm-hmm. And that could be done via Skype or some other way. Mm-hmm. But I think that check-in and that investment of time is important to, like, assuage any fears or concerns or make sure that everybody's on the same page. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jillian. Next caller, please. This one is Anna Lovick.
Out of San Diego, California.
Out of San Diego, California. Let's hear what Anna has to say.
Hey, Pickett Street Properties. It's Anna Lovick with the Alchemy Company here in Southern California. And I think I'm too late to submit this voice memo, but if I'm not, my question is, I've heard you discuss expansion teams on the podcast, or mention expansion teams. And I guess I'm curious if that is a direction that you're going to be taking, or if you've already looked into it. Why have you not taken that direction? And I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about what is involved in that. So I feel like this is a big question, a lot to tackle. So I don't even know if it's inappropriate for this episode that you're putting together. But anyway, if you feel like it's something you want to discuss, it is something that I would like to know more about. Okay, thanks so much.
Anna, thanks for your question. This episode is like a patchwork quilt that we're stitching together, and it's going to look like however we want it to look like. And so we're happy to answer your question about expansion. Mm-hmm. Expansion was the what's something that's big right now? See, I have kids in my house, so I can. Expansion is like the Visco girl of real estate, and or if I were to break it down a little bit differently, man, why can't I think of like a pop culture reference that's hot right now?
All I can think of right now is a Snickers bar.
A Snickers bar? Mm-hmm. Just a Snickers bar? Well, that doesn't work for my analogy at all.
You know that commercial where they take a bite of the Snickers and suddenly they become like a nicer person?
Yeah.
Somehow.
No, expansion was the hot topic around 2012 to 15.
Yeah, oh my God.
It was a big deal.
You see how we were just in line right there?
Yeah, totally. In fact, I would argue that a lot of the expansion teams that came out of that era aren't there anymore.
No, they're not. Yeah.
I know Brian Gubernick had Wes Jones in Bellevue, and that was like one of the first expansion teams, and it was highly successful. Bellevue, I know at one point that expansion team was more successful than the Hub. Mm-hmm. And I believe they're still friends, but they're not in partnership anymore, and Wes is doing his own thing. And I think expansion was a natural byproduct of short sales and REO sales going away, where teams that were used to doing hundreds of transactions there was a threat that they would be hard pressed to meet those numbers as short sales became fewer and fewer and REO properties became fewer and fewer. And so we saw a lot of short sale and distressed property type groups that moved towards expansion to fill the void, which good on them. We didn't do it, and our numbers just dropped. Like, we just lost. Now, but we did try. So I will say that we failed. We've failed at expansion as much as anybody to some degree.
Well, I mean, we never had an expansion location actually open.
Right, but we interviewed, not for lack of trying.
Oh, for sure. Like, I would say when I think of this question, I think of what was one of my first experiences in, like, creative brainstorming and attempting something and understanding that if it fails, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, because I was still pretty new. And so when I went to all the expansion classes Keller Williams offered with you, I was in front of Gary Keller, like 10 feet away. I was like, this is happening. We're going to be massive. And I was creating systems and processes that could expand across the United States. That was my frame of mind. And then I went after trying to like land different possible partners for us along with you. And I think when I think of this question, I thought, that used to be a goal of mine because that was what was presented to me as an option. And I thought that was the right way to go. And for me, I think what happened, because that didn't happen, was what just naturally occurred, which was you and I are both creative people, and things happen that are different from what we might expect. And that's kind of the beauty of it. So instead of expanding, what we're coming up with is a variety of businesses that are way more entertaining than expansion's really dulled to me a lot. It's actually kind of boring for me to think about. I don't really want to start 11 different expansion teams around the United States when I could be doing a podcast, a retreat, and all these other different interesting things that are way more challenging and curious to me than that.
Well, I have a little bit different take on it. I think expansion is great if you find the right people, and we just didn't find the right people. So, I would love to have someone south of Seattle. That's been a desire of mine for a long period of time. We hired someone, and they quit the first day. It's not for a lack of trying.
We've talked to people in Seattle, South Seattle, Federal Way area, Tacoma, San Francisco.
Yeah, all over.
Yeah.
We almost planted somebody in Kentucky or Tennessee or somewhere. Yeah. And then we've tried to go down that road. We had a lot of materials developed, expansion materials developed. So,
and like we've talked about previously, it's probably because we were finding our foundation. So we have our foundation now. We have a really solid group of leaders here, and I think that was part of the issue, is we didn't before. And so if the opportunity was presented to us now, I feel like we'd be in a much better position to do it.
Yeah, I would say expansion is an arrow in our quiver that we're not afraid to use when the moment's right.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't been right yet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can see it. I can see us expanding in the future. Mm-hmm. And I think the most successful expansions, I think about Wendy Papasan in Austin, Texas, and, one of her key people had to move to St. Louis, and so that was a natural expansion that happened because of that. And so if you can take a key player on your team and relocate them, or they have to relocate, I think that's an absolutely great way to
So are you saying that if I had to relocate, that'd be cool?
Sure. I would never limit your geographic dreams. I think there's a lot of things. I'm happy to have people work remotely or work wherever. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be here. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if someone decided that they wanted to, if Jessica said, hey, tomorrow I'm moving to Portland, I'd be like, great, you're going to be our expansion partner for Portland. Yeah. Right? And she would do it. It would make sense. Yeah. So. Yeah. 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 It's kind of nice that not everybody's talking about it anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
It got a little nauseating.
Yeah.
But.
Same story, different day.
I'm easily bored. So.
I'm excited for this next question for you.
For me, specifically. Are you going to introduce this?
I actually don't know this listener very well. She was recruited to submit a voice memo by Amanda Condyles. This is Carmen out of Federal Way, Washington.
Where do I start with my 401k when I'm 48 years old already?
Very brief.
Okay. I mean, starting it is how you start it.
Well, it made me think of the golden handcuffs and the different conversations and panels that you've been on talking about.
Okay, Margaret,
exiting real
A,
estate.
I love you. And B, sometimes you say shit wrong.
All the time I do.
Golden handcuffs is not at all what you're trying to say. You're trying to say something totally different. Do you know what you're trying to say?
No.
The golden handoff.
Oh, thank you.
Which is very different
But I
than
almost
golden
loved it.
handcuffs. The golden handoff, for everyone else who's looking for context, is a book written by a friend of mine out of Portland, Oregon, and it's about buying other people's real estate businesses or taking over their businesses, and it's called the golden handoff, which is different than the Harlequin romance Margaret confused it with, called the golden handcuffs, and somehow relates to this question about a 401k. No, I mean, to go back to the question, how do you start anything?
You begin.
Yeah. So set up a 401k. It doesn't matter what people in 20 years, you can do a lot in 15, 20 years. So I would find a top level financial advisor, because you're not going to become that at 48 years old, probably. And then maybe make sure the 401k is what you want to do. Like, there are many investments that may be better for you based on your knowledge. I knew from a younger age, once I got into real estate, that my investment portfolio was not going to be based on the stock market.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know the stock market, and it would take too much time and energy for me to become knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I am very knowledgeable about real estate. I'm very knowledgeable about real estate investing. So why would I
it's
not
smart.
invest in real estate?
Yeah.
So
pick what you're good
and
at.
same there is start there too. I would say we have more conversations about people buying multifamily homes than any other conversation we have every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Yesterday, I said I got you to come to my computer because I was like, here's 3 house hacks.
Yeah.
There's one we have a house hack in Everett.
Yeah.
It's a triplex. And here's what we mean by house hack. You may think that if you want to live in Everett, Washington, the average price is probably $475,000, let's say. It might be higher, $500, but you can still get something for $400 in Everett. But let's say it's $500,000. You can buy a triplex for $600,000 and live in a unit and rent out the other 2 units, and it's affordable. It's very affordable, and someone else is paying down your principal. So, and this is something we have a conversation about all the time. So, Carmen, if you don't own a home, save up for that instead of a 401k, in my opinion. And if you don't own a home, don't buy a single family home.
Yeah.
Buy a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex that you can own or occupy for 12 months. If I could just have people put aside their stereotypes and their judgments and everything else. If you are currently renting from anyone, I'm encouraging you to talk to us or talk to somebody about buying an owner-occupied multifamily residence for a year. If you live in it for a year, you can create tens of thousands, maybe even more wealth in a year's time frame that then gives you the opportunity to do things or to buy a house that you didn't think you could afford. But it's also going to get you hooked on investing in real estate and the amount of money you can make. And so Margaret's done it twice. As a single woman, she bought a duplex, renovated it, lived in a unit, sold it, renovated a new duplex, lives in the unit, and there's opportunity there. So I'm not the person to ask about a 401k, but I do know the only way to start something is to begin. And then I would challenge you to say, if you work in real estate, you probably have a lot of great minds around you who can help you grow wealth faster than a 401k could.
And just as a side note, there's a woman I met recently when I was in Florida at the Amplify retreat who's 55 years old and just starting her folder. And she now has 3 duplexes that she's gotten in the last...
Her folder.
Her folders. Like, she's starting... You're going to get some good words from me today.
No.
In the last 2.5 years.
You're blowing past this. I want to stay here. I want to live here in a moment. I'm sorry. What'd she add to her folder?
Her folder. She added 3 duplexes.
Margaret, do you mean a different word?
I don't know.
Are you trying to say portfolio?
Yes, that's it. She added to her folder.
How many homes do you have in your folder? How many doors? I've got 30 doors in my folder. Can you imagine if you just showed up?
That would be amazing.
Oh, here's Margaret. She's done 2 house hacks. She's very knowledgeable. How many doors are in your folder?
Next time I'm on a panel for investors, I'm going to totally use that.
All right. We have waded through all of your questions and all of your statements to get to the true gold of this program.
The true precious jewel.
We don't have a lot of submissions for people that listen to my weird, warped analogy request. But we do have 2. And so I'm very excited for us to move toward the end of this episode into the true gold of this show. And so I'm going to thank Laura Sims and Melissa Weedling specifically for taking a stab at this, because this was difficult. And just to remind everybody, because context is king, what I said a few episodes ago was essentially imagine, like I somehow, I don't know, this is weird even to talk about, but it came up in the moment. Like, imagine this podcast is like a woman who's just had a baby in recent history.
You added a baby.
Oh, did I? I thought it was there. Like, let's say 3 months ago, 4 months ago, you had a baby, and this is like your first date out on the town, and you've showered and you've tweezed and you've shaved the legs, and you're putting it on, and you've lost the baby weight, but maybe just inside you're not sure, right? And you got your makeup on and your hair did, and you wearing that new dress, and you come out to greet your husband, and as finally clipped, as our listeners, you're our husband, and we're reaching and we're looking to you for affirmation and validation. And what is it you say to us in that moment? And hopefully it's not, you look fat in that dress. And so we had 2 people respond to this. So let's just jump in, because this is awesome.
Hi, Jesse and Margaret. This is Laura Sims, and I live in Paris, France, where I'm expecting Margaret to come visit me, hopefully soon. And I'm going to reply to prompt number 1, the one where you've just come out of the bathroom and you're asking us how you look. And so my response is basically the Jack Nicholson quote from As Good as It Gets, which says that you make me want to be a better person. I'm naturally inspired by Margaret's journey, I think most especially because she shows how using fear as fuel can actually be fun, which is important, because even though I know something intellectually might be good for me, I'm much more likely to do it if I believe that there is immense joy on the other side, which is something that I see in Margaret. And then Jesse is just a delight to listen to. I love hearing how your brain works because it's so different from my own. I have a PhD in history and I'm a very linear thinker. And it's really interesting to hear how you can draw connections between what to me are the most disparate of ideas and events. So thank you for that. And finally, I just wanted to say that the work both of you put into becoming the best possible versions of yourselves is straight up infectious. So I really appreciate you letting us be privy to your journey. So thanks.
Oh my gosh. My heart is warm.
When I saw that pop into my email and I listened to it, I just about died.
You make me want to be a better man. That's what he says.
I thought it was so creative, so well put. And then I replied to that email and I said, by the way, like, you have a great sultry radio voice. And she told me that was one of the best compliments she's had, because much like everybody who submitted a voice memo, actually, there are very few people who have ever told me that they enjoy the sound of their own voice. So she's got a fantastic podcast voice.
Again, I'm just going to be playing this on a loop as I fall asleep every night. So I'll tell you next anniversary show the impact that has had on me by just hearing this affirmation. No, I think it hit me right in the feels, because you may not know this. You know, I actually taught a sermon based loosely on As Good as It Gets.
Shut up. Really?
No, I did, yeah. And that's a tough road to hoe, because it's not a Christian movie by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. And but there's a line in the movie where Jack Nicholson is screaming at Greg Kinnear, and he says, "I'm drowning here and you're describing the water." And I feel like I did a sermon that basically that was our role in Christianity, was to describe the water, like to make sure that people understood the circumstances they were in, or whatever the case may be. And so little did she know that brought up this whole backtrack to one of the sermons. I used to, in college, I was asked to preach several times at the church that I attended, and so I think I went behind the pulpit 3 times, and the last time was this sermon.
As good as it gets. How perfect.
Well, thanks for sharing. And I want to send both of these listeners a thank you gift of some sort.
Yeah.
Probably a book or something. But and this next one, I mean,
it's just priceless.
This is listeners, if you've made it this far, we didn't tease this because I didn't want there to be any false hype. But this is just like the best. Melissa Weedling, I love you for this so much.
Wow, finally. You are looking so click tonight. Like, everything is just falling right into place. And it is working for you. First, I just have to say that I feel so lucky that I found you. Like, what? I always look forward to our time together because I know I'm going to laugh, I'm going to learn something, and I'm going to get motivated. I appreciate all that you contribute to our relationship. You're always a step ahead. You're well prepared and willing to dig deep to make sure we're both growing together. You've always got something clever, insightful, and valuable to say. You introduce me to fascinating new people, and you keep things interesting by jumping down bunny holes every once in a while. Those are exciting times. I mean, just when I catch myself giggling with confusion about when sharks have fins and when they have tendrils, or if they're really just cat claws, you swoop back in and envelop me in a swath of context. I love your consistency and how you keep things spicy with that ASMR box. And more than anything, I appreciate the way that you're so willing to be open and lead by example. You're generous with your knowledge and experience, and it teaches others how to be vulnerable, brave, efficient, silly, and successful. I'm truly honored to follow and subscribe to you. Happy birthday.
Oh my God, Margaret, am I blushing right now?
So much so.
Oh my gosh.
A lovely shade of rose.
Oh yeah, when she goes, oh, what? Like...
The comment about taking us down bunny holes and keeping it spicy with ASMR. I mean, she texted me the night that she did this, and she said she could hardly keep herself from crying as she was doing it. She was laughing so hard. And then, so I know that her wife was like, why don't you speak to me like that?
No kidding,
what is your voice? Oh my God, it was priceless.
Winner, chicken dinner.
I out of the ballpark,
awesome.
And she hesitated on submitting it. I was like, that is gold. Even I listened and I replied back to her and I said, first prize.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what you're getting, but you're getting something. There's now a prize.
No, that was, I mean, my analogies are ridiculous, and the fact that you came through.
She came through hardcore.
And you totally redeemed my analogy.
Yeah, she did. She made it real.
And I'm just saying that as someone who just, we had a kid let's say 12 months ago, we had this kid called this podcast, and we're a little unsure, you know. We've had better days, and we're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
But dang it, we're ready for a night out.
We are ready.
And after coming out and having you say that, man, you're going to get lucky tonight. That's what's going to happen. Like, our clothes are off. Like, let's do this.
2020 is going to be a hell of a year.
Wow. I just feel like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, that, like.
We just leveled up.
We leveled up
like,
big time.
I'm confident. I'm ready. Oh, that was so good.
That was unbelievable. Seriously.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello there.
They get you. You are so
good.
clicked.
You're so clicked right
You're looking so clicked tonight. Oh my God. Clickers.
Oh, so good.
I think that's just the best way to end this episode.
It is. We saved the best for last for
we
sure.
Really did.
I just want to say honestly and from a place of gratitude how lucky we are to have an audience at all that listens to us on a regular basis. Thank you for putting up with our idiosyncratic delivery style for our we're not audio engineers, though. We strive to be better.
We do.
But mostly we just we enjoy this. We enjoy the collaboration, and we enjoy the feedback from you guys, and we wouldn't do it just to hear ourselves yell into the void. So your feedback is absolutely essential to this continuing. So just thank you very much, and congratulations to us for this year celebration.
We made it. We were consistent. And I
we
could say, after talking about joy in this episode, I just would say thank you for adding to our joy.
Which is hilarious because I pressured you for like 8 weeks to get this going.
You did.
And every time you're like, God, I thought he was going to let it go. And I'd be like, hey, when are we starting the podcast? You're like, God, I'm doing other things right now. And I'm like, Monday, Thursday, when are we starting this? And then finally, I don't think you believed me. I don't know if you believed me that I wanted to do this.
I think I believed you. I think I was just stuck in what I would call a folder of reservations where I was unsure of how we were going to make this happen. Because when you do something, you don't like to do it lightly. Like, you were like, let's make a studio. And I was like, can't we just use an app on our phone? Oh no, we're going to have a studio with like Joe Rogan type mics and video cameras, which we're that is, I think for 2020, the next step for us would be to increase our audio abilities with drops, and then also to get another camera and put ourselves on YouTube.
Yeah, I
so
will
people
say,
can see our face.
For those that don't know, and I feel bad like disclosing this a little bit.
Why?
Yeah, so if you want to do a podcast, if you want to do it right, it's not cheap.
No, yeah.
We bought a lot of equipment to do this, and my hack was to get the entire office behind creating the studio and using...
Well, it's a huge benefit. It's and it's something that you told me they've been wanting for years.
Yeah, so...
And I did all the work. Essentially, you paid me to build them a studio. So you're welcome. And I'm I'm happy to have done it because it is a huge benefit to us. I would much rather be doing this with these mics and this equipment than whatever we could have put together, ourselves. And the fact that it benefited the community around us, I'm happy for it. I'm happy for them that I could do something for them.
Well, to me, it's just another lesson about this podcast in general, which is we were going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to spend a ton of money on it. And so we got the entire office behind it. And it's not our studio.
No.
We use it a lot. But it is for the benefit of everybody in this office. And
and the team leader brings the recruits by and talks about the studio, and it's a big pull. Yeah. This is a lot of really nice equipment and an opportunity, and then it's up to them on whether they use it or not.
Yeah, so I would say, it's something to think about is if it's something you've wanted to do.
Yes, there's always a way.
You can absolutely get your market center behind it.
Yes.
And create a space for all the agents to utilize.
People have reached out to me, and I've shared our equipment list with, I think, 2 different people that are thinking about doing it with their market center.
If you want Margaret's equipment list, it's 2 payments in $19.95.
Right.
Or a walk around Green Lake in Seattle.
There you go. And dinner.
Margaret, thank you for sticking by me for this year of podcasting.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My analogies. Thanks for saying words wrong occasionally.
You know what? I'm happy to be myself and laugh about it. So when I talk about folders and sharks and fins tendrils, I really enjoy myself.
Cats click.
I laugh at myself many times by myself. When you're not even around, I'm laughing at myself. So I am really thankful that I can make myself laugh. Because if I couldn't, I wouldn't have as much fun. Damn it. Mm-hmm.
No truer words have ever been said. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.